thank you all for joining this SCC webinar on unlocking data intelligence. This is actually a first of a series of webinars that we're running on how AI solutions can support local government, especially with the challenges they're facing. So to introduce myself, I'm Rebecca Tyler. I'm Head of Local Government and Education at SCC. So as many of you know, as valued customers already, SCC has supported local government for over 30 years now, helping councils modernise workflows, strengthen compliance and improve resident services. But today we're partnering with Smartbox.Ai to showcase how Hackney Council has transformed and modernised their governance workflows. So I would like to introduce you to our guest speaker, James Isles, who is the Data Protection Officer for Hackney Council. We've also got other speakers, Donovan Hutchison from Smartbox.Ai, Paul Barlow, who's an account manager here at SCC for local government, and Dapo, who's our document workflow specialist at SCC. Before we start, there will be a Q&A, but please do add any questions as you want to within the chat. These can be discussed at the end. There's also going to be a link to request a demo or further information that will also be in the chat. I'm now going to hand over to Paul Barlow, who will share with you as an account manager firsthand where he supports councils with the challenges they face. Thank you. Paul, you're on mute, sorry.
Well, that's the classic Teams but mistake. Hi, sorry about that. Welcome, my name's Paul Barlow. I've been working local government now for over 25 years in delivering digital solutions to support the valuable services you deliver to the public. I think today local government is facing many challenges to just maintain, to deliver the services the residents and businesses they support under immense financial pressure and resourcing challenges. Over the past 12 months, SCC has been working with local government customers and partners to develop and promote solutions that deliver tangible outcomes, such as resource management, enterprise service management, and many more, as you can see on the slide here. Today's webinar, as Becky said, is a series of webinars we are promoting in 26 to provide valuable information to councils. This event today looks at addressing the resource-intense area of information governance in councils to provide requested information against stringent timescales. So I would like now to hand over to Donovan of Smartbox.Ai to introduce this fantastic tool that reduces the effort required in providing information for these requests. Over to you, Donovan.
Yeah, thank you very much for the intro. So hi everyone, I'm Donovan Hutchinson, the Chief Revenue Officer for Smartbox.Ai. Just wanted to say a huge thank you to the SEC team for having us today. I'll just spend a few moments to give a clear overview of Smartbox, but also why so many organizations now see us as the #1 solution for managing DSARs, FOIs and overall information governance workflows as well. So who are Smartbox and why do we currently exist? So Smartbox is built specifically for regulatory compliance and any teams who are essentially managing large volumes of high complex information requests. These are things such as DSARs, FOIs, court disclosures, safeguarding reviews, social care audits, but much more as well. Our mission is quite simple. It's to remove the manual, repetitive workloads, reducing human errors, and giving organizations over 80% reduction in SAR response times, whilst also improving their information security posture within their organization. So everything we've built has been shaped around real world challenges, and that's what we're going to be taking you through today. So I'm not going to spend too much time on my slides, as we definitely want to get to the star of the show, which is James Isles. But what we will be taking you through is complex SARs that typically take anything between 20 and 50 hours per case. Also, how we manage massive mail threads that need untangling, essentially. Making sure that we also meet the 30-day required deadline. And that timeline doesn't move, as you may already know. And also, how do we deal with all the different file challenges that organizations have within their organization, from written documentation through to emails, through to messages on Teams, and so on. And for many councils and also public bodies, what we are identifying is that these volumes are in fact not going down. We're seeing a significant increase right now in the number of DSARs and FOI requests each and every single day. And Smartbox have seen a significant influx in the number of opportunities that we're working with in various different councils around the UK right now. So if we just go on to the next slide. And I just want to talk very briefly about why Smartbox is the #1 choice. And it is quite biased because we are Smartbox. However, many of our clients see us as the number one choice for a number of reasons. So our platform focuses on eliminating bottlenecks from the moment that requests arrive into the platform. And the capabilities that we tend to talk to our clients about are mainly around the fact that our solution is built for regulatory compliance, as I mentioned. Everything is structured around GDPR, ICO guidance, audit trails, defensibility, and also clear workflows. And it's important, certainly around that defensibility standpoint. Smartbox infrastructure is on a very secure environment. So whenever you put any information into Smartbox, do any necessary redactions, everything is tracked, everything has an audit trail, which means that it becomes defensible. And that's critically important. So whenever you are doing a subject access request, or even if you are working on a legal case, for instance, within a council, then so long as it's within the Smartbox environment, then you have a full audit trail that allows you to then become defensible should it ever go down that route. So security as well, that's another key area of the platform. We operate to high security assurance standards because councils, NHS trusts, but also government bodies demand it and require it. We hold various certifications from, well, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, but also our ISO certs. We hold a cloud backend infrastructure, which is highly secure. And we also manage and monitor the usage of the environment at all times. We also have our core automation capabilities within the platform, and this is where the time savings actually happen from automatic PII detection within Smartbox, being able to bulk redact at scale, looking at dataset deduplication to remove thousands of duplicate files instantly, as we tend to find that many organizations have a problem with that. Or if you have one email trail when you're searching for a particular particular incident, you may have another email trail which just has additional information at the bottom. Our solution can identify near matches where possible, and it will highlight the most recent emails that are available within the Smartbox platform, which heavily reduces the file sizes. So the sectors that we work in, predominantly local government, and that's where we're seeing a significant increase, as I mentioned. We also work with NHS bodies, healthcare providers, police, education authorities, housing associations, but we also have a significant growing enterprise landscape, specifically private sector organizations in legal, manufacturing, finance, and so on. But as I mentioned, local government seems to be the area that is continuing to grow exponentially. In terms of real world impacts, and I'll leave James to get onto this bit very shortly, but we like to think that Smartbox is helping to reduce time and effort when it comes to the management of DSARs as a whole. And on average, we are seeing 80% reduction in the amount of time spent in managing DSARs. It also helps to reduce significantly human error that may occur, especially when you are reviewing files individually. It also helps to strengthen the information security of the DSARs and also free up staff capacity for higher value work that may need to be conducted within the councils. And that's ultimately why organisations are now turning to Smartbox, because these challenges are continuing to grow, as I mentioned, but the budgets and also headcount are not growing as fast or in alignment, I would say. So rather than hearing from me, it's always more powerful to hear from people who actually use a system day to day. I'm really pleased to be joined by James Isles from Hackney Council, who has been one of the early adopters, I would say, and has a brilliant perspective on the challenges that councils face and how technology can really change things within the council arena. So, James, great to have you on board. How are you?
All good. Thank you for having me. It's not often I get a captive audience to talk about SARS, so good to be here.
Brilliant. Okay, so before we get into the details, are you able to just give everyone a quick sense of your role over at Hackney, but also the types of requests that your team handles?
Sure. So I'm the interim data protection officer responsible for our centralised information governance team. So I think like many councils, we've got a centralised information governance function who do all of the SARS for sort of HR, social services, legal, housing, etc. General data protection responsibilities for the data protection officer, but my real sort of risk area at the moment is, like many councils, subject access requests. So it's good to be talking about Smartbox and hoping that other organisations will adopt it. We're seeing lots of different types of requests. I think you touched on it earlier. Local government, we're such a broad type of organisation. We deal with so many different types. We've got an internal housing function, so we're seeing a lot of housing related SARS. I think a problem for many councils at the moment are mould and damp in housing. So we're definitely seeing an increase in those type of SARS. We're seeing an increase in SARS from care leavers. They're incredibly complicated. And we're seeing an increase in HR SARS as well as we restructure our organisation. That obviously leads to people wanting to understand the process. So lots of different types of areas, lots of areas where we can use Smartbox.
Okay, fantastic. So when it comes to DSARs and FOIs, what was that one moment where you actually thought, okay, we need a technology solution here? The manual way just isn't sustainable.
I think the manual way has not been sustainable for so long, and it just needed someone to come in and offer something different, because I think I speak for most people who work with subject access requests in that Adobe can be soul destroying. Using Adobe for SARS is a horrible experience. But I guess the inflection point for me was we suffered a really serious criminal cyber attack in 2020 that impacted our ability to respond to SARS and FOIs on time. The ICO were paying really close attention to us. We'd received a reprimand. So we needed to invest to achieve a sustainable footing. And for us, it wasn't just a case of increasing headcount or outsourcing. We really had to look at technology. So Smartbox was a solution for us, and I'm happy to talk about why we chose Smartbox over other providers. But essentially, we needed to carry on doing really good work. We just needed to do it differently.
Okay, Fantastic, brilliant. And when you were reviewing your options, what was it specifically about Smartbox that stood out for you? I know early on you mentioned things like speed of response, how quickly like take on feature requests, etc., and that's important when it comes to DSARs in general. But what was it specifically that stood out for you at Smartbox?
I think there were so many things. Like most organisations, we're in a really difficult position financially. We're looking for sort of £50 million of savings, so we can't go out and buy the most expensive thing on the market. We don't particularly want to develop something internally, so we want something that works for us and we can get up to speed with really quickly. So for us, it was obviously Smartbox, but we also needed something that we could implement really quickly. It was cost effective, but also that people enjoyed using and that we could replicate across the organisation. So our approach as an organisation is we don't just buy something for one function, we buy something that we can use across a number of different functions. So I'm more than happy to talk about it. But for example, our legal service can use Smartbox, and our HR service can use Smartbox. And obviously, it's always there ready for our cybersecurity service as well. Touch wood, we never need to, but we know that Smartbox will be there for us if we need to understand what data has been impacted by a cyber attack.
Fantastic. Okay, and how has Smartbox.Ai actually changed the SAR and FOI process over at Hackney in real everyday terms?
In terms of everyday terms, I think the most important thing for me as a manager has been the experience of colleagues in the team. So we've got about sort of 11 people in our team that work on SARs in some capacity, and they work in an area where we don't typically see investment. It's very much quite a repetitive task, and I think that's the same across many councils. You'll work on a separate access request, then you'll move on to the next one. There isn't always that investment in the service area to do things differently. So that was really important for me as well, taking over as an interim, is that we invest in our people. So not just deal with the problem of separate access requests, but also show colleagues that we are investing in them, and that their service isn't a forgotten service. So for us, it was a Smartbox to invest in the human, but then also it was really highly functional. So we bought it about 2 years ago now, so we're coming up with contract renewal time. So the market was quite immature back then, but Smartbox was still a leader then. But I think the most important thing for me was that something that would work, that would be low risk for us to adopt as an organisation, was reputable. So you've always had your cybersecurity accreditations. So it needed to be good for the human, good for cybersecurity, but also needed to be rapidly deployable. So I think the most impressive thing about Smartbox for us was that I think I paid the purchase order or the invoice, and I think I'd logged in within 5 minutes. So it was just a case of having login details and away you go. There was no complicated engineering needed. It was very much something that my service could do without reliance on other service areas.
Okay, brilliant. And obviously, as I mentioned before, you are one of the early adopters of the platform. What advantages has this given you so far? Was there anything that surprised you, but in a positive way, that Smartbox did?
So I think for me, I just touched on it then, but I think the ease of setting it up was really important to me. Is that we're a really busy organisation, we're doing so much. It could have been really difficult for me to say to my management team, we need X resource in our engineering team to implement a solution. So I was really impressed by just how quickly I could get Smartbox up and running. There's an added benefit as well, that it's not license based, so I can have as many people in the application in sort of 5 minutes as possible, and roll it out to other service areas. But also I think the responsiveness of the organisation. Smartbox isn't an enormous organisation. I think for the last 2 years, Hackney has felt like it's a bit of a collaboration. We felt like we've co-developed Smartbox with you, in the sense that all of our feature requests have been acknowledged and in some cases implemented really quickly. So I think a really good example of that is white redactions. So Hackney has always been really keen, where possible, to use white redactions rather than black redactions. We believe as an organisation that it reduces the emotional impact of receiving big walls of black text. So we asked Smartbox for white redactions. I think we'd only been a customer for 3 or 4 months. And then sort of the next month there was white redactions available. If ever we've had an issue, or I shouldn't really say issue because it's not really an issue, but if ever there's been any queries about sort of the functionality or something, if we wanted it to work a little bit differently, your customer success team are always in touch really quickly, some within the hour. And I know from working with other privacy technology providers, that's just not the case. Unless you buy the super premium tier of customer service, you're not going to get that level of service.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously on the flip side of that, was there anything during the rollout that you didn't expect or that others might want to be aware of? Naturally, Smartbox is an intuitive tool. It's easy to set up within a short space of time, as you mentioned. But was there anything during the rollout that actually you thought, yeah, that's something that we should be looking at as part of a engagement with Smartbox?
Yeah, I think I implemented it really quickly. We were in a really serious position with our SARS and our relationship with the ICO, so we needed to implement something quickly. So I think my advice for people working with Smartbox, and I'm really pleased to have spoken to so many different councils now who've adopted Smartbox really successfully. Organisations much larger than Hackney. Would be just to remember the human element, to take your teams on the journey. And I think Smartbox is really good at this now, is working with the organisation to take all of the users on the journey with Smartbox. So, the guys who are going to be using Smartbox to do the SARS all day, every day, the training was really, really good. But, there's obviously always sometimes people who are reluctant to adopt new technology. If you've used Adobe to redact for 20 years, that's great for you, that works for you. And all of a sudden there's some new technology and you're expected to have more output, and things are meant to be moving a lot faster. So I think, for me, what I would do differently next time is just remember that not everyone in the team wants to adopt things really quickly. They need a little bit more consideration and a little bit more hand-holding. But I think the other things from speaking to other organizations as well is that it's not a silver bullet. It isn't just a case of you put all your material in Smartbox, press the redact button, and then that SAR's done. There is always going to be that human element, and I think that's a good thing, because you can't depersonalize SARS. It's very much a human thing. So I'd encourage anyone who wants to buy Smartbox not to go into it thinking, oh, well, it's only a 50% improvement in our experience. That's 50% more than Adobe, where you're going to be drawing black boxes manually over things all day, every day. So yeah, just it's not a silver bullet, but it's as close as you're ever going to get.
Yeah. Okay. And if you were to start again from scratch tomorrow, is there anything that you would do differently or wish you would have done in advance?
Not that much, really. Really pleased with how it went. Like I said, just remember the human element, taking people on the journey. It's not a silver bullet. Don't expect to plug and play and everything's perfect. There's still a lot of work that goes into SARS, just a lot less. But I think for me, it would have been giving it to other service areas in the organisation, to really maximise the benefit of the tool. So giving it to your legal services as quickly as you can, giving it to your HR team as quickly as you can, making sure your cybersecurity team are aware that there's this really good tool that's going to help you identify whether there's been what data is involved in a data breach, if you're ever unlucky enough to have that happen to you. I think those would be my takeaways.
Okay. Perfect. And I've just got a couple more questions. So you've spoken a lot about councils across the country, and what themes are you hearing about? What are the authorities learning and also deciding as they look at DSARs, FOIs, and also the broader disclosure management?
What I'm hearing from organisations, and Hackney saw this, I should have mentioned it earlier on in the call, but Hackney experienced this really early on, and I'm glad to see so many other organisations having the same. But it's just remembering it's not just subject access requests, but it's really, really good at freedom of information requests, where you typically redact a lot more than you do in subject access requests. So the bulk redaction, get your FOIs in Smartbox as quick as you can, because it's probably going to be a lot better at FOIs in some ways than SARS, because like I say, you redact so much more and it's so powerful at identifying personal data. But I think what Hackney's experiencing and so many other organizations are experiencing is that we can't always add headcount. We all probably do need more headcount, but you can't just go straight for headcount. But what you can do is use Smartbox to get in those deduplications. Because what we saw before using Smartbox was when we were in Adobe, if you're redacting a 10,000 page file, that's not one day's work, that's probably 2-3 weeks work. On day one, you've got X understanding of the request, but on day 8, you've got a completely different understanding of the request, and you've probably forgotten where you've seen duplicates before in managing the request. So on day one, you've redacted John Smith. On day 8, you actually know that John Smith is a major player in this SAR and doesn't need redacting. With Adobe, that would be really difficult to go through and make those changes. In Smartbox, you can do it instantly. And I don't think anyone wants to be doing more work than they have to as separate access requests. So the deduplication is really powerful in that if you can get rid of 60% of the data before you even start, your redactions are going to be much more consistent throughout the file. In that, so you could potentially reduce the amount of complaints you see about redactions because they're consistent throughout, because your understanding of the SAR hasn't changed massively while you've been working through it in Smartbox.
Yeah, and I think one of the other key advantages of Smartbox is the fact that every single file that is uploaded within to Smartbox ultimately is converted to PDF automatically.
That's been massive for Hackney. So Hackney is a Google organization. I don't think there's too many of us, but there's going to be a lot of organizations that don't use Microsoft Purview, so they don't have the ability to export everything in a really readable format. So for us, when we first adopted Smartbox, we had to go into every Google Mail, which is obviously a Chrome-based application, go into our emails, click File, Print, Save As, PDF. That could be a full-time job for somebody working through an FOI that involves lots of emails between the chief exec and the mayor. But with Smartbox, I can just drop in the mailbox, the entire mailbox, or the results of the Google Vault search or the Purview search, and everything will be within 20 minutes converted to PDF. And then I can further refine it within Smartbox. So I can say, okay, we only want emails that contain chief executive, or we only want emails that contain the word pension. You can't do that in Adobe.
Yeah. And what about different file types as well? So within the council, I imagine it's like not everything is in digital form. Do you also work in like with stuff that's printed? Obviously, anything that's handwritten within the council. What file types are you currently working with at the moment?
Yeah, so I think like most local government organisations, and I used to work in the police as well, where I definitely would have loved to have had Smartbox. We work with a lot of microfiche records, so very old records. We work with a lot of scanned handwriting. From social workers, perhaps in the 60s. And I think it was organisational policy in the 60s that social workers used to have awful handwriting. I think it was a requirement of the role. But at least with Smartbox, I think I've been told by Smartbox, and I don't disbelieve it, because what I see is that if a human can read the handwriting, Smartbox can read the handwriting. So you can redact handwriting, in those really old paper files that have been scanned. And deduplicate as well. So I don't see much difference between using Smartbox for handwriting or things that have always been digital, which I think is really good and isn't something that your competitors can say.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, the key question here is how are you seeing councils also apply this technology in different service areas of their organisation? So things like you did allude to this earlier when you were talking, things like court disclosures, SARs, FOIs, etc. Where's that momentum heading? Is it just in DSARs and FOIs, or are you seeing it used more in HR or security functions?
Definitely seeing it used in broader functions. Those organisations that have adopted it really well have spent a lot of time getting as many people into Smartbox as possible. So I'm not going to name drop, but there are some really large organisations that I've spoken to, really large, complicated organisations who've got their HR teams using it. They've got their social services team using it for maybe their MARAC and their sort of formal case conferences where there might need to be some redaction. Then there's obviously housing associations that are using it. There are arm's length bodies for councils. The organisations that have done a really good job of adopting it are giving it to as many people as possible. And obviously not every organisation is like Hackney that has a centralised SAR function. A lot a lot of even in London, local councils have sort of federated models where it'll sit in the service areas, and then there'll be a little bit of oversight by the DPO centrally. There's no reason why they can't use Smartbox to the benefit that Hackney and all those other councils are using it. Your information governance model or your legal model doesn't take away from the value of Smartbox.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very, very much, James. Really appreciate your valuable insights. I am now going to hand it back over to the SCC team. So thank you, James.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much. So we've reached the Q&A portion of the session. So if any of you have got any questions you want to add into the chat, just pop them in. We're going to start with a couple that we've had submitted already. So I think we've covered this slightly, but just to be really clear, first question is Smartbox.Ai secure for handling sensitive government data?
Absolutely. I would say Smartbox uses enterprise-grade security protocols. Data encryption is also applied in transit at rest. And access controls also ensure that only authorized personnel can view sensitive information, and that is absolutely key. So if you have a council who has multiple departments, we can split those departments up so that they're not able to see each other's information as well. And I think that that's critically important, especially when you're dealing with PII data or sensitive information just in general. So our back-end security postures are incredibly secure as well. So yeah.
Fantastic. We've had another one come in here. So again, I think we've covered this a little bit with the examples that James gave, but can Smartbox.Ai integrate with existing council systems?
Yes, we can. So we have various different connectors. We support integration with common CRM or case management systems or document management systems as well. We also have APIs to allow for custom integrations as well. So in answer to your question, yes, it's important that our system has the ability to be able to access information in a local council environment, because then we're able to pull that information directly into Smartbox where possible as well.
Fantastic. And what experience has SCC and Smartbox.Ai got in the local gov space?
Well, I think we've kind of covered all of that as part of this call. I think James has done a fantastic overview, and as I mentioned earlier on, we are seeing a significant increase in the number of requests coming in from local councils and local authorities just in general. I think it's predominantly down to the increased increases in DSARs that are coming through, but also the number of FOI requests as well. So yeah, we are seen as the de facto solution when it comes to local councils. And if there's any local councils that would like to work with us, then obviously reach out to the SCC team, and we're more than happy to help and assist.
Fantastic. I think we've got a couple Q&A in the chat for James. So James, what percentage of time would you say it has given you or saved you as a organisation?
I think if I look at standard access requests, I think it's fair to say 60%. Hackney is obviously, like many councils, experiencing increased demand, so it's difficult to measure the impact of something when demand is going up. But it's created capacity to fill that demand. 60% is not to be sniffed at. And then there's freedom of information requests. If you've got an information request that you can manage within Smartbox, correspondence between officers and things like that, then there's no reason why you can't do 90. Like I say, you typically redact more for FOIs and you can filter down. So 90%, for FOIs, really happy to put my name to that number.
Fantastic. That's a great number. And another one for you, James. How quickly did you start seeing the ROI from your investment in Smartbox?
So I talked at the top of the call about there being sort of the human impact of investing in Smartbox. I think that was immediate for us. Being as a manager, being able to say, we've invested in you. This is something to make your life easier. We value you so much. We're really happy to do this. That's immediate. That's a really good message to share. And then I think when we look at deduplication, and sort of getting confident with the bulk redaction and adapting our internal processes, within a week we were seeing improvements in it. But I probably should have said this earlier on in the call, but I think the organizations that have adopted Smartbox really well are those that are prepared to change their internal processes to fit Smartbox rather than asking Smartbox to fit your internal processes. Technology is technology. It's easier to change your processes and work differently than sort of ask Smartbox to do the reverse.
Fantastic. I think that is all of the questions that we have got in the chat. So I will pass over now to Dapo to close us out.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. Really hope that this has been it's been informative. As Becky mentioned, we will be hosting a number of other webinars in the weeks to come, with the next one being in and around agentive AI. But just as a next step, we've got these two QR codes. We'd like, obviously, in the coming weeks to book demos to actually have a look at what Smartbox can do for you and go through the platform and actually give you a sort of an experience, even if not necessarily hands-on. Yeah, for more information, please feel free to reach out to myself or to your account managers.